Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about determinism. Determinism is a philosophical and psychological idea which has broad implications across all of society, particularly in the social sciences. This breakdown of the idea of determinism will be broken down into three main parts. Part 1 will look at the dichotomy that determinism exists within and the conflicting idea of free will. Part 2 will argue in favour of determinism and why this idea should be viewed as an obvious truth. Part 3 will examine the implications that the idea of determinism could hold on society. Part 1. The dichotomy. Before there can be any in-depth discussion surrounding determinism and its implications, we must first consider what determinism is and the dichotomy that it exists within as an idea. Determinism is the idea that an individual does not have any free control over decision making. Everything that happens, including everything that an individual does, is predetermined and a result of underlying causes. Free will and free thought are merely illusions created by the intricate nature of human consciousness. Determinism comes in a number of forms, including the very stupid and unsubstantiated idea of biological determinism. Generally, determinism believes that human behavior is a result of both genetic and environmental causes. The antithesis of determinism is, of course, free will. Free will claims that individuals are free thinking, able to freely make decisions unimpeded by factors that are out of their control, such as environment or genetics. It is important that we realize that these two ideas are in opposition to each other and are not compatible. Most people will say that yes, people are influenced by factors such as environment, but they still have the capacity to make free decisions. These people still believe in free will, which is incompatible with determinism, as it implies individuals have free control over their behavior, at least to some extent. Nobody will ever argue for complete free will. Such an idea is completely nonsensical and cannot even be imagined. It would entail people behaving completely freely from outside factors. This is not possible, and there are no examples of people forming like this. In fact, you will likely find that merely imagining such an environment where this could occur is essentially impossible. Free will versus determinism is a dichotomy. Both ideas are in opposition to each other. One side is right, and the other is wrong. Part 2. Why determinism is correct. The most basic argument for determinism is simply a question. If behavior is not a result of factors outside of one's control, then what exactly does cause behavior? Some people arguing for free will claim that it is the personality that molds and shapes a person's behavior. The personality is of course not a free actor, and is instead a result of genetic and environmental conditions outside of a person's control. Others arguing for free will try to claim that you can freely choose your environment. You can choose where you want to be, I can choose where I want to be, but only as a result of cognition built up by previous factors that I did not choose. In psychology, it is almost universally agreed that behavior is caused by nature, nurture, or both. These are the only causes for behavior, and both of them are out of an individual's free control. I can guarantee you cannot come up with another factor that allows an individual to freely manage their behavior. Determinism is correct because no other cause could possibly underlie behavior. Most arguments against determinism are merely a reflection of an individual's self-perception. They perceive that they have free will, when in reality this is a mere illusion created by the intricate nature of their consciousness. The consciousness itself is merely a result of factors outside of one's control, such as nature and nurture, and is therefore incapable of making free decisions. Part 3. The implications of determinism. Perhaps the most important thing to consider if determinism is real is the implications that the psychological and philosophical view could have on human society. Determinism has the capacity to radically transform how we view society, each other, and even ourselves. Most societies and philosophical outlooks are based around the idea of free will. The free will illusion, created by the intricate nature of human consciousness, has had a remarkable effect on how society is structured and how people think about both themselves and others. With the acceptance that determinism is true and behavior is a result of causes out of our control, this could have massive consequences. We would have to accept that the difference between the worst people to have lived and the very best were merely a result of genetic and, most importantly, environmental conditions that were out of these people's control. The implications of ideas such as this one can be both positive and negative. The idea that people are not free actors could have implications that could be beneficial or harmful for a society. It is important to note that determinism will change how we view morality to an extent, but much will remain the same. Whether or not determinism is the case, people and animals can still feel pain and suffer. So long as creatures are sentient, which they are, morality will remain important. It is also important to note that you do have a kind of control over your actions. You can mold your own future. The future you happen to end up with will, however, be predetermined. Most people are completely accustomed to the idea of free will, so this can be very hard to understand. Even though people do not freely choose how they act, actions should still have consequences. Consequences for certain actions, such as a speeding ticket for speeding, can have the impact of predetermining people to not make the wrong decision. We can have consequences for actions and still realize that actions are predetermined and not the result of free will-based decision-making. Determinism does allow us to have a greater level of compassion for those who make bad decisions, as we can realize that on a deeper level, it is not their fault. This can be very useful for understanding, helping, and forgiving other people when they do bad or stupid things. Perhaps the heaviest implication of determinism would be on the way we view crime and justice. It would be harder to blame criminals for their acts, as we often do. It would be easier to look at the factors that determine criminals to act in criminal ways. A certain level of punitive measures could be useful for determining people out of committing crime. If people are not freely responsible for their actions, however, it would be immoral to punish them too severely, and rehabilitation should probably be dominant in the justice system. It is also virtually guaranteed that some people will exploit the idea of determinism to defend their criminal acts, claiming it was not really their fault as they did not freely choose to commit the crime. Such a defense is of course exploitation of determinist ideas and leads us to question whether many in society could even cope with the idea that they do not act freely and that their behavior is in fact predetermined. Much information needs to be gathered, and deep moral, sociological, philosophical, and psychological analysis needs to be made in order to properly understand the impacts that accepting determinism could have on people and societies. This is a very interesting yet complex issue, and we must be very careful with how we let it impact ourselves and our societies.